Hey, everybody. Welcome into tonight's episode. I am so excited. I've got one of the owners of a major auction house on with me tonight, love of the game owner, Al Crisafulli, and great guy. I've been on a panel with him before, and he's just a normal dude. I tried to get to talk to him at the National this year, but he was so busy talking to people wanting to consign cards or asking questions at his booth. I wasn't ever able to meet him in person, but I think a lot of him. I think a lot of his auction house, and I'm so happy he came on with me tonight. So I'm gonna bring him up right now. Hey Al, how are you?
Tony, thanks so much for having me, man. It's so good to see you, and I love this podcast. So it's great to be a guest.
Well, man, I'm so excited for you to be here. I came back in the hobby probably about 4 years ago, and honestly, I didn't know eBay existed. Like I knew what eBay was. I'd bought a few
Right.
things. I had no idea that you could buy all these sports cards on it. And then shortly thereafter, I don't remember exactly how. I'm sure it was from YouTube or maybe from Instagram. People were talking about auctions here and auctions there, and I thought, what are these auctions? And man, when I happened on that, that opened up a whole new world. So.
Sure.
So, anyways, yeah, that was like walking into a candy store.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It was very similar for me when I came back into the hobby probably 20 years ago. It was the idea that you could just go online and buy these cards that before that, the cards I had never seen before. I'd only read about them in books and things like that. And suddenly here's the internet, this whole universe. It's changed the entire hobby. I love it. And it gives you access to things that, you may never have had access to when before the internet, so it's pretty,
yeah. So back in the day, the only way you would see a card, you're probably similar age than me. I'm 56. You would see stuff in Beckett's and things like that, and some of those cards were almost mythical because I would go to my local flea market or my local card shop in Nashville back in the day called the Great Escape. They'd have the run of the mill 1960 Mantle or a 60 McCovey or a 58 here, but they mainly had golden era tops. The pre-war stuff I had never seen in my life. Like it was mythical. And even just a random T206, I'd never seen it before. So yeah, you're right, man. It opened my eyes to a whole new world.
I had a local card shop that I used to go to with my allowance, a very small allowance when I was a kid. My father left when I was very young, so we didn't have a lot of money, and I fell in love with the hobby as a young kid. And the card shop owner kept a shoebox just for me, and I liked 51 and 52 Bowmans, and I liked T206s. So he would put beaters in this shoebox, and then when I would go in, it was 50 cents a Bowman and $1 a T206. And I could go through, 9-10 years old, I would go through this shoebox and pull out, the players who I would talk to my grandfather about baseball, and I would listen to the stories he would tell about the players that he watched and the players that that he knew. He was born in 1918, so he was born just after the T206 era, but he still talked about. I remember him talking about Rube Waddell was a player that he talked about a lot, and so I would find those players in the shoebox, and those are the ones that I would bring home. I still have every one of those cards. I'll never. You can bury me with those. That's
awesome. So that's one of my questions. So like, I know you do the auction house and all that stuff, but you come across as a guy that really has passion for the hobby. Like this isn't just a job for you.
No,
you don't look at cards as this is the way I earn a living. It gets kind of old, and you look, it's a card is a card is a card. So it sounds like to me you're a collector at heart. So
I love this stuff.
What do you collect now? Like I know you said you still have your childhood stuff.
Yeah. So it got difficult when I started loving the game. I made some rules about how I can acquire cards, right? Because it's obviously I have access to a lot more, right? So I decided pretty early on that if somebody came to me with cards, privately, that has to be a consignment, right?
Yeah.
So the only way that I'm willing to buy cards is if I'm willing to pay more for them than anybody else, right? If I'm going to be the high bidder in an auction, or if I'm willing to buy it off a table at a show, that sort of thing, right? So
Right.
that makes it hard. It makes it hard to collect, and
Yeah.
it makes it hard to afford the hobby, right? It's also kind of hard to afford the hobby when you know, I get so much great stuff that comes across my desk, right? And I can't afford any of it. So so it's harder to to collect, to find things that I get excited about, because there's so much great rare stuff that comes in that I can't buy, right? I won't bid, we can't bid in our own auction here. We don't do any of that. So there's no auction house account or anything. So if it comes across my desk, it's going to leave my office and go to some winning bidder somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a bummer, but it's
Yeah.
what it is. So what I have started to do, really, I have a 1953 top set that I slowly I'm upgrading, because I love those cards. And then aside from that, I collect kind of what you see behind me, which is larger format, mostly 19th century team photos. I love team photos.
Yeah.
And so that's behind me over here, over my shoulder, is the 1886 Detroit Wolverines. And then above them is the 1929 Toledo Mud Hens with Casey Stengel.
Wow.
I'm a Casey Stengel guy, so
Yeah.
so he's on that team.
So that kind of reflects a lot about what your auction represents. Like, as you have a lot of pre-war stuff and 1800 stuff, that's kind of your niche. Would you say that's kind of what y'all are known for?
I think I've always been focused on pre-war because it's what I like.
Right.
I love the idea that in the case of those cards, we're spoiled in that we can jump online or turn on ESPN or whatever 24-hour sports network that we can. We can watch highlights all day long, right?
Right.
A lot of these people, especially if you grew up on the West Coast during the Depression or during the early 1900s, you might not have any idea what Ty Cobb looked like if it wasn't for a baseball card.
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah.
So you're collecting these cards, and it's the first time that you're ever seeing these people, reading their stats once they started putting stats on the back of the cards. That was your exposure to baseball, and a lot of it's in your imagination. Even later, you could hear the game on the radio, but you're learning the game through baseball cards and box scores, and it amazes me that those two things still exist. There's nothing to me more beautiful than a box score, because you can just look at that box score and it will tell you everything about the game, and there's really nothing else like that, right? So I'm very, very drawn to that stuff, and always have been. In terms of love of the game, I think what happened was during the pandemic, when there was or the beginning of the pandemic, we're still kind of in the pandemic, but at the beginning of the pandemic, when a lot of interest was generated in modern and ultra modern cards, we sort of sat back and said, okay, the hobby is exploding, and a lot of it is going in that direction. What are we going to do? How are we, as love of the game, going to position ourselves? And after giving it a lot of thought, I sort of decided we're going to stay right here where we are, and we're going to focus on stuff you don't see every day, because I think we're good at that. It's what we know. It's what we love. Look, I'll take all of the Derek Jeter rookie cards you want to send my way. But really, I get a lot more enthusiastic about some weird, obscure regional or some 19th century thing, or some kind of thing where it's actually truly rare because not a lot of them survived.
Right.
There's always there's no way to be an expert in that stuff, Tony. There's always something to learn, and that makes it so much more exciting to come in every day and wonder, what am I going to discover? What am I going to discover today? I still can do that. So so
the love and the passion that's coming through the screen right now with what you're talking about is one of the things I appreciate about the way you market Love of the Game. I'm big on Instagram. Okay. I got the Southern Collector Instagram page, and I follow you guys.
Right.
So I love like what you're doing right now on your Instagram story, and then also on your page. You're doing more of like letting us in on a glimpse of history. You have the official guy talking on this day. This is Lou Gehrig standing beside Joe DiMaggio in this Type 1 photo. And it's making it history, and it's not all about dollars, man. It ain't about one day you'll see your return of investment come up to this. No, man, you're going after collectors, and that's what I appreciate.
So those Instagram posts, we're not actually producing those. Okay, we actually stumbled across this guy who was doing this, and he did some of these videos, short form. They're little 60-second stories that he did with stuff that had been in our auction, and so I took a look at these things and said, oh my God, this is crazy. These are great. And he's able to take these stories and go even further in that direction that you're talking about, where we're just not at all talking about the value of the thing. Not at all. It's just purely about the story. At some level, I have to describe the condition and the scarcity and why it's important to want to own it. That's part of my job.
Exactly.
But what I really want to do is just tell you all about the guy in the picture,
no doubt.
And so, the fact that he does this, it was really cool to reach out to him and say, hey, do you want to partner up? And you can do some of these videos on whatever you like in our auction. We'll give you some hints, and I'll tell you some stuff that I would like for you to talk about, but just go here's my auction, tell us some stories, and I think he's doing a great job. That's a lot of fun. So.
Well, I noticed that because my Instagram, I'm a guy that when I post a card, I don't go, this is a 1949 Bowman Stan Musial and it's signed. It's a pop of this, and I paid that. I don't, to me, that's really shallow. I want to talk about Stan Musial. I want to talk about what he did, his stats, what a great man he was. He was the saint of St. Louis. He was always there. I go deep. And man, if I don't use every character allowed on Instagram, I didn't do a good job describing that card. And so that's what I'm about. There are people in the hobby. One was just really in the news in a certain interview, I'm not going to name names, who basically collect to flex. Like, I'm rich, you're not, look what I bought. And that doesn't appeal to me, man. If that's the only reason you're collecting it, because that's not cool. Like, that's shallow. I like how y'all do it. It ain't all about the money and dollar and cents, man. It's about the love, the passion, knowing about that player, knowing about that set, knowing about that Type 1 photo, that photographer, even like Charles Conlon. My gosh, the dude, you start learning this thing, Underwood and Underwood, all these guys. It's amazing, man. Y'all got some of the best Type 1 photos out there.
Yeah, it's great stuff, Tony. And like I said, there's never an end to how much you can learn, whether it be about the game, about the hobby. One of my favorite things that I've ever sold is a calendar from 1902 in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. Which is a sleepy little town in the Poconos, and there's this baseball team. It's a town team, and in the photo is a black player in uniform in 1902, and so I look at the photo and I say, well, he's not supposed to be there. Why is he in this photo? And that sent me, chasing after the story of this guy, and I learned his whole thing. I learned his whole story and why he was on this team, and the other town teams in the league that they played in, they wanted this guy off the team, not because he was black, but because he was great. He was so much better than everybody else in the league. And I traced this guy through this town league into World War I, back home, traced his whole life. And the calendar, I think, sold for $400. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever sold, because there were so many stories in there. There was so much about it, or just recently when we had these cabinet photos that were that the hobby has always called 1904 anonymous cabinets, and we were able to discover that they were actually 1907 American League Publishing cabinets.
Wow.
What other, where can you do that? Where can you, and we've done that a number of times over the years, just learned a whole new thing about a set of cards that nobody ever knew before. What other kind of hobby gives you the ability to just discover something like that, about things that have been around for 100 years, it's the best hobby that there is. I still look at it as a hobby. I understand that there's an investment component. I understand that everything has a tangible, has a value. I wouldn't be able to do it for a living if it didn't. So I respect that. And I keep it close that people are making decisions with their dollars when they're buying. I get it. But if you strip all that away, it's still the greatest hobby in the world.
It is.
And it's such a great thing to do. And we're keeping this stuff alive. We're keeping these stories alive. We're keeping these players who are long gone. We're still talking about them with the same reverence that people talked about Babe Ruth in the 1920s. He's still one of the most famous Americans.
Yeah, that's right.
He's been gone since 1948, right? So it's we're helping to preserve all that, and what a great thing to do.
Yeah, to me, it's all about stories. That's why I'm a Larry Doby sign collector, because Doby, what he didn't get any of the credit Jackie got.
Right.
Like Doby said, nobody ever said they're going to be nicer to the second guy. Right. But he did all the same stuff, only he started in July, but he did it in the American League parks. Yeah. And he ain't got a day named after him. I ask people all the time, you know who Larry Doby is? Nope. And then they get a 30-minute story about who Larry Doby is, because I'm passionate about that. Another thing, stories, that picture right there is Babe Ruth handing a ball to a little girl. I have the ball. I have the Type 1 photo of him signing the ball, and I have the ball. That little girl's story is staying alive because it's in my possession. And I will tell that story every time somebody comes in the card room. I'm going to show them the Type 1 photo. I'm going to show them the ball. I've got the newspaper clipping that she saved her whole life until she passed away.
Wow.
I even found in the newspaper what they said to each other. So I know what the conversation was. That is special, man. Great. That is not just spending $500,000 on a card and going, look what I got.
Right.
No, I mean, that's cool. Look, I
sure.
do that. But to me, that kind of stuff is what's rich. And, I want to bring my grandson in here when he's old enough, and I want to tell him about Steve Gromek and Larry Doby, and I want to tell him about Pee Wee Reese and Jackie Robinson. And I want to use my collection to teach stories and to teach lessons. And to me, that's the richness of what we do as collectors. That's just me. Not everybody's like that, but that's how I come at it. And to me, it makes it a lot more gratifying.
I think that's that last piece that you just said about it being gratifying. I think people who collect that way get a different kind of joy out of the hobby. There is something to be said for. Look, again, I'm not going to begrudge anybody. There's a million different ways to collect, and there's a million different things to collect, and for some people it's the thrill of the chase. For some people it's the value of the stuff. For some people they want to have the best or the highest grade or whatever. And I don't begrudge any of that.
Man, I don't either.
But I feel like the people who are collecting the way you are where they're putting together stories, they're passing along the the wisdom and the experience and the just the rich history of this game and how it parallels the history of America. It's a different kind of thing. It's a different hobby for folks like that. And
no doubt.
I it put me in a room with guys like that all day.
Oh my gosh, man, that one you had at the National that went down right after that with the handshake with Jackie at home plate,
right,
was I tried to win that. It went a little higher than I thought, and good for you on that, and good for the consigner. But
sure. Well,
I couldn't make it happen.
The consigner was his son, which
That's
made
right.
it. He was like, I'm sure he liked the check that he
not
got.
Jackie's son.
No, George Shuba's
son.
And I think that he, I'm sure he liked the check that he got, but what he really liked was seeing his father's name out there, and knowing that people were talking about his dad, all these years after he'd been gone, and I think that's great, So it was cool. Doubt. It was cool to handle that one.
So I did a little bit of homework. Like when I have somebody on like yourself that's a national figure, I'll look on YouTube and see if I can find any kind of interviews that maybe I can get a little background. So one of the things, I think you were on with Rico Petrocelli. It was right before the National. Sure. And another guy, thick Boston, that Cod. Didn't say Card.
Tom Zappala. I just did a podcast with him earlier today.
Yeah, man, he was awesome. But I'm over here in the South saying we collect baseball cards, and he's saying God. Yeah. So, anyways, you kind of told your story on there that you were a collector. You had an advertising agency, I believe, a marketing company, and then you decided, hey, man, I'm going to do an auction house because it was in May of 2012. Something went down that you were sick of, and you said, I'm going to do it right. What was it that went down?
So that period of time was I was a collector pretty exclusively, and I had this little ad agency where we started to do work for some of the companies in the hobby, because when you own the company, you can pitch whatever kind of company you want.
Exactly.
Right? So we did work for Robert Edward Auctions. We did work for SGC. We were SGC's ad agency. We did work for a couple of other smaller companies in the hobby. And if you think back to that period beginning in around 2008, there was a lot going on with auction houses and fraud and card doctoring and shill bidding and all of that kind of stuff. And as a collector, to feel victimized by that, and also to feel like there's just black eye after black eye for the hobby, and to a degree I was having sort of a weird existential crisis as I was getting older, as I hit 40, and I was starting to think, what am I going to leave behind? What do I do? And I'm in the ad business, and everything I do gets thrown away eventually, or gets forgotten eventually, and so what I really want to do is I want to work in this hobby, and I want to start a clean, ethical auction company, and see if you could do it. If you can't, I'll just go make money doing something else. I'll get a job, but I felt at the time, and I still do, that there's enough that you can run an auction house in an ethical way, and make it work. So,
right.
Knocking on wood. So far, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination the most wealthy guy in the hobby. Not even close. Not even in the top 1,000. But I'm able to sleep well at night, and enjoy all of the friends that I've made in this hobby, and know that I'm doing it the way that's right for me. And so it's, that's kind of the genesis of it.
Well, of course, this is very timely that you told that story, because the same thing is going on, obviously right now. One of the things that brought that conversation up in that interview was, what's his name?
Tom Zappala, yeah.
Zappala. Okay. So he goes, it was when that big fake autograph scandal and the guy killed himself had come out, and he said, "What's this going to do to our hobby?" And you said, "Nothing."
Nothing.
You said, "This has been happening. We're always having scandals. This is always," and so now you're going back to the fact scandals happen, and that's why you started your auction house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how hard was that to do? Like, I'm not talking about the ethical part. I'm just saying a ground up. I know back then, I don't think there was many auction houses. I wasn't in the hobby then. So I wouldn't know, but
there weren't as many as there are today, but there was a good number of them. And we did it without a net. I mean, my first customer was customer number one. And my first consignor was consignor number one. I didn't buy a mailing list. I didn't, have a built-in base of consignors. I literally just started sending emails out to people that I knew and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing," and got some people who were kind enough to help and make some consignments of that very first auction. And I don't ever want to do anything else, Tony. I love this so much. I love this hobby. But yeah, all of these scandals and all this craziness, it's been like this, Look, I remember, when I first got married in the early 90s, reading hobby magazines and having, reading about how these bad guys were rebuilding the corners on 33 Gaudi cards and making it look like, they were mint condition when it was, you could just pull the, and that was before grading, so it's, as long as there's money in it, no matter what it is, there's going to be bad guys in it trying to take advantage. And
that's right. Greed.
I think the thing that I've always liked to say, and it's not easy to do as a collector in this hobby, because you're constantly fighting this battle about you have a want list, you have stuff that you want, and then somebody has it, and then you have to make a decision about whether or not you're willing to buy from that person. The way to make the fraud go away and the way to make the bad stuff go away in this hobby is to stop buying from the people who do it. And that's the only way, but there's always this, whenever these things happen, there's always this, the hobby needs to have an organization. It needs to have somebody to
police it.
Yeah, right. No, what needs to happen is people have to stop buying from people that commit fraud, and just like sit on your hands, don't hit the bid button, and eventually they'll go out of business, or they'll say, "Oh, if I want to make money, I can't do this stuff. I have to be above board," and then so that's how to clean up the hobby.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat the shield thing to death, because Lord knows there's been enough videos and talk about that. But one of my buddies, John 3D 80s Kid, he's one of the 4 collectors. He did a great video, and he did a spreadsheet with all 20 auction houses, and there was 4 auction houses that allowed house bidding, and one major one, and of course you're going to know who that is without naming it, that even allowed consigners to bid on their own stuff, and said if the consignor wins it, then all you got to do is pay the buyer's premium, and you have the choice to reconsign it to us for a future auction or keep it for yourself. Like, what kind of bull crap is that, man? And I use that auction a lot, and they have great stuff, and so, it's like a carrot, and like, I feel like Adam and Eve and that apple's over there, and I don't really want to eat it, but man, it's tasty. But at the same time, that you had a card. It was the signed 49 Bowman Jackie.
What a card that was.
Oh my gosh, the best wishes. It was,
Uh-huh.
oh my Lord.
Yep.
I was hoping the
Sure.
fact it was trimmed across the top would scare some people off. Maybe the set registry geeks wouldn't want it because I don't care about that stuff. And so I had sold off some cards. I had all this money built up and I was the underbidder. And it got to, you know where it went. It got to that price and I had to back out. But let me tell you something. At the end of the day, I know I was not shield bid because it was in your auction. That is an actual comp. That card didn't show up on the market a month later because some dude bought it from himself and then reconsigned it to try it again. And you don't know, or you do know actually, because you're a collector. That means the world, man.
I can't tell you, Tony, how much it means to me to hear you say that. You know, I lose consignments every day because of things that I won't do. Yeah. And you know, when I hear, you know, it's not a surprise that shill bidding happens. What's a surprise to me is people who are collectors who say, well, what's the harm in it if I'm willing to pay, you know, $500 for this card, you know, and somebody shows me up to $500, I'm still paying a price that I was willing to pay. And I think, okay, let's say you bought a house in a neighborhood where you looked around that neighborhood and all of the houses seem to sell for $500,000. So you're willing to pay $500,000 because you really want to live in that neighborhood, and you buy your house for $500,000 and you move in. Now, what if you found out after you bought that house that all of the other houses in the neighborhood really are only $300,000? Would you still be willing to pay $500,000 to live in that $300,000 house? No. Yeah. You know,
what if all the other neighbors were bidding that house up so some idiot didn't get it for cheap?
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it sounds almost like a quote.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a troublesome thing to me. And I realize that you know, we can't stop it from happening. Right. But people need to understand that it's fraud, it's unethical, it's illegal most of the time. You know, you just because I put in my rules that I allow it doesn't make it legal. And you know, so the way to make it stop is to be really vocal about it, and to stop bidding on in situations where, you know, where you think it's an issue. You know, yeah. Sometimes, you know, once in a while I'll get someone to call me up and say, I think I was shilled on a lot, and I get frantic when I hear that, because, you know, my first thing is, do you think I did it? Because I was not even, yeah.
Yeah, you know, like, it's in your rules that y'all can't even see what the max bid is.
No, I can't see the max bids. I don't have access to your password. I can't get into your account, right, to do any fraudulent anything.
Well, I like what you said right here. We do not have a fancy name brand for this. We just call it integrity.
Yeah.
It should go without saying. And then you go on to talk about consigners may not bid on their own materials, blah, blah, blah. So you lay it out in really concise terminology there.
I have had situations where, and look, I'm not, there's no way for me to know who your friends are, right? So if you consign something to me and one of your buddies bids on it, I don't know. But I can tell you that I have had instances where a bidding pattern looked weird to me, and I've dug into it and picked up the phone and called the bidder and said, hey, what's going on here? In one case, I actually, this is actually funny, I had a situation where a guy was bidding on cards of a person that he knew, and I knew that he knew the guy. And so the guy consigns these cards to me, and the auction is going, and this guy is bidding, this friend of his is bidding only on these cards. Okay.
Oh man.
So I called him up and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And you know, I mean, I was a lot more polite about it than that, but you know, I said, it's pretty obvious what's happening here. And he goes, I knew you were going to call me, and here's the story. I've been lusting after those cards for so long, and they were in his collection. And I was hoping that when he was going to sell them, he was going to give me a shot to make an offer. Yeah. And he didn't. He just consigned them. And I want them. Like, I want to buy those cards. And he was really convincing, and I believed him and let him bid. But there was another situation where I had a consigner who and it was a shame because this person had a great collection. And they had one autographed baseball that was signed by a handful of Dodgers players. And he consigned it to me, but I had seen that he had it. He was set up at a show, and he had it on at his table for a ridiculous price. That was, just way beyond what it was worth. And on the closing day of the auction, I got a frantic email from a person who wanted to register to bid. And, please let me register, blah, 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 because we kind of have a policy that if you register on closing day, you're out of luck. We don't let you bid.
I've seen that.
Part of the reason why we have that policy is because of this situation where this person begged me and used their eBay feedback as an example of they had 100% feedback on a high volume of transactions. And so I said, all right, I'll let you go. And we registered them, and they bid on one thing. They bid on this baseball. And I was like, that seems weird. And so I looked, and they lived nearby to this consigner. And then when the auction closed, the consigner, the woman, it was a woman who placed the bid, actually paid me with the consigner's check. And she just signed the check over. And so I had to call that consigner and let him know, I'm sorry, we can't ever do business together again. And I sent him back the check, and I sent him the baseball, and that was that. And it's it's a shame. Yeah, it's a shame. But we try and pay attention. And when we see a bidding pattern that looks a little weird, I'll get on the phone and find out what's up. And you know what? A lot of times it's legit. There's but once in a while, they say and then I have to cancel a bid and ban a bidder, and so it.
Well, it's awesome that you care enough to do that. So getting away from the shill bidding, okay, I want to jump on something. I see you on Instagram crossing the country, going to town to town, trying to get consignments.
Yeah.
Do you put out a call to those cities, or do you already have people that you've talked to that before you get there, or is it a combination of both? Because you work your tail off, man, to get stuff for your auctions.
Usually what happens is I will have an end point. I'll have a reason that I have to be in Los Angeles, or a reason that I have to be in Arizona. Somebody's got a consignment that needs to be picked up. And then from there, I will build a trip around it. I'll look and see, okay, who's on the way. And I will try and do it in such a way that, all right, I'm going to go to Arizona, but I'm going to stop in Ohio. Then I'm going to go, down to St. Louis, and then I'm going to go to Tulsa, and then I'm going to go. And then once I've got enough stops to make it worth taking some time and doing that trip, then I'll advertise and say, this is where I'm coming. If I'm on your, if you're on the way and you'd like to consign, drop me a note and I'll swing by. And I've been doing that for about 10 years. And to me, that is a big part of the fun of this, is getting to see the country and actually meet up with collectors along the way, and spend some time shaking hands and sitting in your living room and hearing your story and all of that.
Oh man, that would be awesome. And I'm sure the face-to-face meeting it makes it more possible to land the consignment, because they know you at that point. It's not some dude on an email.
It is. I think it's helpful when it's actually a face-to-face interaction and they can see, I try and be real human about this whole thing, and not be an oily sort of huckster type, and
We know those
I try and avoid that, and doing it in person is, it just gives you, the other part of it is that for me, it's like I'm getting to know you a little bit, which gives me, it's like now I have some skin in the game. I sat in your living room and learned about your situation, and what are these cards to you? What why are you consigning this stuff? Why are you selling? Sometimes it's not for the greatest reason. Sometimes the health issue, or there was a death in the family, or there's something like that. But sometimes there's joy. There's a wedding. You're paying for a wedding, or you're doing a renovation, or you do so it's cool to kind of know, it's just not just a box that came in the mail. I sat with somebody on their porch and I listened to them talk about how they're about to have their first grandchild, and or they're getting married, or they're buying a new house, or whatever it is, and I'm going to help them with that. It's kind of cool to know when you break a record on a price. I know that's going to help this person with his dream home, or whatever it is. So
cool. To the consigner story, what is the most amazing story you got? I'm just putting you on the spot. Something that you got a call on, you went out there and you walked in and you couldn't believe what you were looking at, and just your mind was blown.
There is absolutely no question about what this is, what the answer to this question is. In 2015, I got an email from a lady that had her mother actually had a game used Lou Gehrig bat.
Dang.
And she wanted to know how auctions worked and what did I think it was worth. And she explained that she had the bat authenticated already, because she went to she first reached out to the Hall of Fame to ask them. And the Hall of Fame told her, we don't appraise anything. We can't give you any indication of values, but we can tell you that it's going to need to be professionally authenticated. And these are the different places where you can do it. So she had gone to PSA DNA and had this bat authenticated. And it was a PSA 8. It was a Hannah Batright Gehrig bat. And thus began this big saga where every auction house chased after this bat. Everybody wanted this bat. And it was a newly discovered Lou Gehrig bat. So I meet this woman in a diner in New Jersey, and I'm truncating this story. I'm making it as short as I can, Tony. But
it's good.
I got together with this lady and her cousin, and I didn't know this until later. Her brother was sitting at another table in the diner by the door in case so he could tackle me as I ran out the door. And so we sat there and we talked about our companies and whatever. And she had the bat with her, and I took the bat out. And after I was done, I was like, all right, listen, I really want to consign. I want you to consign this bat with me. I think I could do a great job with it. But I have to do what I'm going to do right now. And I got up with this bat and I got in my stance in the diner in the middle of breakfast, and I swung Lou Gehrig's bat in this diner just so I could say that I swung Lou Gehrig's bat.
Yeah.
And that's how I got the deal, because she told me later, she was like, yeah, there was no way I was going to give that bat to some businessman, so we get the bat. Now, this bat is a Hannah Batright bat. It's not a Louisville Slugger. So at the time, and in most cases, the Louisville Slugger has more value. They have meticulous player ordering records. It's much easier to authenticate. And so the Hannah Batright sold for less always than Louisville Slugger. But it also had a very distinctive Hannah Batrites had a very distinctive looking brand on the center brand of the bat, was shaped like a bat, the animal bat, right? Mm-hmm. And so I thought I wanted to find a picture of Lou Gehrig holding a Hannah Batrite bat. You know, there had been other Gehrig Batrites that had sold over the years, and the auction houses all used the same photo of Lou Gehrig coming out of the Yankee dugout, picking a bat out of the bat. Yankees had a bat tray up at the top step of the dugout.
Yeah.
And he's pulling a Louisville Slugger out of the bat tray, but there was like a Hannah Batrite bat in the foreground of the photo, and that's the photo that all the auction houses always used when they were selling a Gehrig Batrite. And I figured there's got to be a photo someplace of Lou Gehrig holding a Hannah Batrite bat, and I looked for months and I found nothing. And then literally, Tony, the day after I released all of the artwork and everything to the graphic designer to make the catalog, I stumble onto this little thumbnail image. I don't know what I searched for on Google. I don't know what search terms I used, but here's this little thumbnail image. And it's a photo of Gehrig, Babe Ruth, and Bob Schalke in Comiskey Park, and Gehrig is holding a bat, and I'm looking at the bat, and I'm like, that's a Hannah Batrite. So I find out who owns the photo, which was the Chicago History Museum. They had bought all of the photo archives from the Chicago Daily News, which is long gone, and so I reached out to this person, and I said, hey, I want to buy. I told them the story. There's this lady. She's 85 years old. She owns this bat. The story about the bat was that it was the weapon in her house. It was like if somebody breaks in, you hit him with this bat, right? So it was, for years, it was right next to the front door. There were all of these stories about how she almost gave the bat away. She almost, when Derek Jeter broke Gehrig's record for Yankee hits, she said, maybe I'll send him this bat and we can get some tickets, like that kind of stuff. And so I told this person this whole story about this lady and how I want to do a real good job for her. And I'd like to buy the rights to use this photo in my catalog. And he said, well, it's going to cost you. I said, all right, well, tell me. And he goes, well, the license is $40. And then you got to pay a rush fee. That's also $40. And I was like, all right, here's my credit card. I guess I'll do it. And so he sends me the photo, and now I can see it's definitely a Batrite. So now I want, can you send me like a 1200 dots per inch photo? I want a big, nice high res photo. And so he sends me 1200 dots per inch photo. And now I can read on the bat. It says Gehrig on the bat. So I can read it. So I said, all right, this is great because it looks just like this bat that I have. And then I said, now I want to see like how big can I blow this up? Can I make this photo the cover of the catalog? Can I get it high res enough? So I called the guy back and I was like, all right, what's the highest resolution photo that you can send me? And he says, well, 2400 dots per inch is the best I can do. I said, okay, send me that. So he sends me a 2400 dot per inch scan. Now I work on a 27 inch iMac. And so I blow the photo up and I turn the bat to the side so I can see like how big can I make this, and I make it almost actual size. The bat is on my screen and the actual bat is in my lap, and I look up and I'm looking down and I look up and I look down, same bat.
Oh man, you could see the grain and everything.
I photo matched the Gehrig bat.
That's incredible.
And my wife, she was working on the second floor of the house. She still tells the story about how I screamed in the I was in the basement doing this. And she thought something happened. She thought she came racing downstairs, and I was like, I've got this bat in my hand. And so I sent my photo. I sent the photo to John Talbot, and I said, tell me what you think. And he said, you need to get back here with that bat. They looked. He had they did all this work to photo match it with calipers, and they had photos of Gehrig with the bat and or with a bat, and they had a actual Gehrig jersey in their office, so they were able to measure the distance between the buttons on Gehrig's jersey, and then do that to get a sample of size in the photo, and then they were able to say, yeah, you're right, this is the same bat. That became the only photo matched Lou Gehrig bat. It's still the only photo matched Lou Gehrig bat, and it's sold for $438,000.
That's awesome.
And
Good for her.
So to this day, When the auction was over, I called this lady up and I said, listen, I want to bring you your check. I'm not going to mail it to you. I want to bring it to you. And the hug that I got from this 85-year-old lady, and the feeling of just pure joy that this lady, was like this life-changing check. I'm still chasing that. I want that again. I'm still trying to find that level of happiness over a consignment on the part of the consigner. Like that was the greatest thing, that still the highlight. And getting to know that family over the course of these years. I know where I'm still in touch with them sometimes, and I know what they're up to, and just because of this bat, it's just a cool story. There was a reality TV show about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like newsworthy thing. It was really, I was on TMZ.
That's life-changing money, man.
Yeah.
That's life-changing money.
It was great. And just the story of how it all unfolded. There was a lot more twists and turns to it.
How'd she get the bat?
So somebody whose father was on the Yankee Stadium grounds crew.
Oh, wow.
Trying to get her out on a date in the early 1940s.
No
and
kidding.
she mentioned that she was a Yankee fan, and he had this bat that Lou Gehrig gave his father, and so he gave
That's a lot better than what Derek Jeter used to give his dates.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The signed baseball.
Yes, right. Little
flower,
basket, special gift basket from Derek Jeter or Lou Gehrig's bat, but it was a great story, and really was the thing that that helped establish my company. We were sort of plodding along, like trying to get somewhere and trying to show the hobby, this is who we are and this is what we do. And then that bat happened, and that sort of opened up the floodgates in terms of people's understanding of what we'll do, what kind of work we'll do on a consignment, how much time we'll spend on a thing, and how important the story is. And I think that really helped define, love of the game, which was pretty cool too, but even if it hadn't, it was a great story. And
I mean, it's in your name, love of the game.
Yeah.
That's in your name. So I got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
So you've got an auction closing in what, about 11 days?
Oh yeah.
So I want to at least pub your auction a little bit, man. This hour has flown by. Like, we could do another hour. I'm good, but I worry about people not watching. So
sure, I get it.
Anyways, speaking of bats, look at this bad boy.
It's a good one.
Lot 6, George Babe Ruth game used bat. You can see cleat marks, what appears to be cleat marks in the bat. How in the world did y'all get that?
This one came to us at the National, which was pretty cool. We had sold a very, very similar bat a few years ago, and the consignor liked how we handled that bat. It was the same grade. It was the same model of bat, and so when the consignor was researching his bat, he came across our listing for the other one, and so he brought this bat to us at the National and consigned it there. Awesome. Anytime you get a chance to sell a Babe Ruth bat, is
sounds like you're the bat guy.
No, gosh, I love when we get them, but it's not what we're known for. But I do love them.
So here's my favorite lot. This one right here, man. I've got the Toloteros Josh Gibson, and I'm thinking if I could pair it with this one, how epic would that be, man?
Yeah. This is a great card. It's a great card. It's rare. It's anytime you get an opportunity to get a playing days card of Oscar Charleston, who is really truly one of the greatest to ever do it, and who is finally starting to get the recognition in the hobby that he deserves, right? I mean, we sold a Tomas Gutierrez Charleston couple of years ago for $140,000, and then we sold another one in our last auction for 200. Yes, about 250. Right? Was it 250 or 240?
Yeah, it was right up there. Yeah, it was the highest selling Negro League card of all time at that point.
And I love that. It's I think Major League Baseball. I'm very much in favor of incorporating the Negro League stats, and I think when they did that opened up a lot of eyes, and it made people realize that there's this whole part of the game that we have to all learn.
Exactly.
All of these players, all of these names, it's not just Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. There's this whole, there's a whole universe of ball players, and Oscar Charleston is best of the best, and so he belongs right up there in the discussion when we talk about Babe Ruth and Willie Mays. So
the way after studying the Negro Leagues a little bit more, and I've read some books, because I'll be honest with you, when they first kind of talked about doing that, I was like, man, their league wasn't really that organized. Are they going to include like all the town games they played against like high school teams? Because that ain't cool. But then, man, when you really look into what the Negro Leagues were, it is basically, if you took all the black players today in America, which this is one of the horrible things about baseball today, African-American kids aren't playing baseball anymore.
No.
Yeah. It's sad. But let's just say you took the best of the best, and then you took all the best Latin players, the Dominican players that are so freaking awesome today. You put all them on a team, and then you play just the white American players. Who do you think's going to win? That's what the Negro Leagues were.
Yeah.
Because they had the best Cuban players. They had the best Dominican players. They had the best Puerto Rican players. Yeah. They weren't just black players. That was some solid competition, and the proof's in the pudding. When Roy Campanella comes in, I'm preaching right now. When Roy Campanella comes in and wins a couple of, MVPs, you have Jackie Robinson win the first Rookie of the Year. You have people like Frank Robinson and Ernie Banks and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, and all those guys come in right after integration. They didn't just become great ball players because you stitched the major league team on their chest.
Right. Yeah.
They would have been that good in the Negro Leagues.
Yeah. Frank Robinson. I love that you mentioned Frank Robinson, because I think Frank Robinson is Superman, and I think he's one of the most underrated players ever.
I agree.
And
so speaking of underrated guys,
there we go.
I mean, this lot right here is another one of mine, man. I love I've got a couple of Satchel Paige signed items and cards, and this one, I'm gonna have my eye on it. I'm giving people, don't go bidding against me, but at least I know it's not gonna get shield bid.
Yeah, true.
I love signed items. So here's no, and I'm gonna do some rapid fire. This right here is like the basketball Honus Wagner. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great card. It's highly desirable. I want to say that there's 10. And this one doesn't have any of the red ink. It's a variation, and it's the only signed one. And so it's a pretty great card.
Yep. So another signed one. Whoa. This one is insane. I mean, it's lot 1 for a reason.
Yeah.
But to have that pencil signature on the back, I didn't put the back on there, and it still has the coupon.
So it's the second highest graded. It's got the coupon. It's a pre-rookie card, and it's autographed on the back. I don't think it's a stretch for me to say this is the best Z-Nut. Like,
no
the
doubt.
whole this one card is the best Z-Nut. It's a perfect storm. It's a great card.
It is. Well, Al, we ended up on a high note on lot number 1. I appreciate you coming on.
Can I put in one plug for a lot that you didn't talk about?
Yeah.
Okay. So lot number 4, which is the all of the documents talking about history and stories and things like this. This is all of the documents with a thing that very few people know even happened in 1890. The Players League bought the Cincinnati Reds. Yeah. And the Cincinnati Reds for a few months were a Players League team. A lot of drama. There's a lot of there's a lot more to it than this. You're going to kind of explain what the Players League was and all of this. But bottom line is the Players League was a third major league that was started by John Montgomery Ward, and he engineered at the end of the 1890 season the sale of the Cincinnati Reds to the Players League, to a consortium of people in the Players League. Then they took the ownership of the team and divided it up among all of the different Players League teams. And then the Players League folded. And when the Players League folded, the National League tried to buy back, but now you've got this whole convoluted thing where there's owners all over the place, and they had to do it in a hurry because the season was going to start in April, right? Yeah. So January and February, they went frantic and bought back the Reds and put the team back together. And so the Reds were a National League team again for the beginning of the 1891 season. This lot is a lot of those contracts. Some of them, one of them's handwritten contract on a hotel stationery. And you know, some of the other contracts are just handwritten, right? But all together, they tell this story of this frantic chase to first sell the Reds to the Players League and then get it back in time for the beginning of the season. You know, one of the most important and oldest franchises in baseball, you know, that is now back in the news because they're a playoff team now, you know, and you've got this collection of documents, and what's cool about it, there's no Hall of Fame autographs in this collection, but it's like the founding fathers of baseball. The owners of all of these teams are the people who signed the contracts, the senior executives and all of it. It's such a special lot, and it's such a historically important lot. It tells such a great story. Please take a little time and read the description of that.
I did read that. I did read it.
It's a great one.
I figured that was important because you had one that was lot 3 and then one that was 4, and that's not something I necessarily collect. So I didn't put it on there because honestly, I don't know much about it other than what I read in your description. But hearing you talk about it, you sold on it. And it sounded pretty awesome.
It's great stuff. So anyway, thanks for giving me a couple minutes to talk that one up, because it's really one of the coolest things we've ever had, you know, but it's hard to get across what it is, you know. So to have a couple of minutes to tell that story is cool.
No problem. I appreciate you giving me an hour.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me. I could sit here all night and talk to you about this stuff. This is great.
I still have stuff on my list I didn't even ask you, so we may have to do a part 2 sometime.
Anytime you want. I'd be happy to come back and do another one.
All right, Al. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to always do this at the end. I want to remind people who watch me that Tony loves his baseball cards.
Outstanding.